There is a future version of yourself you have not yet encountered, a figure so focused, so resolute, and so unnervingly consistent that meeting him today would feel like encountering a stranger. Why does that figure remain a stranger? Is it because you're not ready? Or is it because you remain attached to a softer, more familiar self, the one that hits snooze, seeks crowds for commitment, and yields the moment life becomes inconvenient? You claim to desire transformation, yet your actions bow to comfort. You speak of purpose, yet chase distractions as if they are salvation. That formidable version is not a fantasy. It is what remains after you execute your excuses, after you enter your emotional turmoil and tear away the comforting lies about timing and motivation. Stoicism does not offer comfort. It strips you bare. It forces you to stand before your own reflection and demand, am I the person I profess to be, or am I still performing? The Stoic philosophers held that virtue is demonstrated through action, not intention. That freedom is not given, it is seized through self-command. If you are still listening, it means a part of you is prepared to incinerate the illusions, not for applause, not for recognition, but because you are finally done existing beneath your capacity. If that strikes a chord, consider subscribing to Stoic Mindset Mastery. It signifies a choice, a quiet, personal decree. I will no longer live asleep. It begins without fanfare. There is no proclamation, no dramatic pivot, only the silent cessation of something that once ruled you. At first, you scarcely notice. The internal narrator, the voice that inquired how you felt, whether you were tired, if you had time today, its grip begins to loosen. You no longer debate with it. You do not bargain. You do not host its justifications or delay its demands with hollow vows of tomorrow. You simply move. The alarm sounds and you rise. The schedule calls and you act, not with resentment, not with hesitation, but with a calm, almost detached certainty. This is where authentic change is born, because most individuals remain in negotiation, still weighing if they're in the mood to pursue the life they claim to want. They are mired in endless internal deals, forever attempting to barter comfort for progress, seeking a painless detour around discipline. When you abandon negotiation, you enter a realm nearly invisible to the ordinary person. They cannot see the shift, but they sense it. You no longer react as you once did. You do not flinch under pressure. You do not explain your maneuvers, and this renewed self disquiets people because it is clean, direct, and unambiguous. It leaves no space for their projections, their doubts, their need for reassurance that you are still playing small alongside them. The reality is this: when you cease asking for permission, especially from your own fragile parts, you exit the predictable cycles that define most existences. You are no longer governed by momentary pleasure. You are propelled by something deeper: duty, clarity, purpose. There is a quiet ferocity in this, not toward others, but toward the aspects of yourself that once held you captive, the part that urged you to wait, the part that counseled be realistic, the part that declared you had done enough for today. Each time you act without internal bartering, you drive a wedge between your past and your becoming. That gap widens. The old voice, the old urges, the old patterns begin to starve. First they scream, then they whisper, then they fall silent. And that silence is sacred, for it is the moment you realize you no longer belong to your impulses. You no longer belong to your doubts. You belong to your word. That is what separates those who ascend from those who remain in loops. Most believe freedom is doing as you please. But as the Stoic teacher Epictetus stated, no one is free who is not master of themselves. Discipline is not a cage. It is the scalpel that cuts through confusion and grants lucidity. You do not act because you feel like it. You act because that is who you are now. And that identity is unshakable because it is not constructed on feeling. It is built on principle, on repetition, on consistency earned in silence, not shouted for approval. Here is the irony most overlook. They imagine discipline as suffering, as restriction, but when you inhabit it, it feels like relief. No debate in the morning, no guilt in the evening, no emotional whiplash between failure and regret. There is only movement, steady, clean, focused, and people begin to notice, though they cannot articulate, what has changed. You haven't posted anything, you haven't announced anything, yet your presence communicates more powerfully than your past ever could. It is in your carriage, the way you see through noise instead of reacting to it, the way you persist when others would have quit 3 attempts prior. That is what renders you formidable, not through cruelty, but in a manner that compels others to look at their own lives and feel the heft of their own excuses. You are not unfeeling, you have simply stopped waiting for the right mood. You are not robotic, you are deliberate, and that distinction between motion driven by clarity and motion driven by emotion, that is the difference between constructing something enduring and relapsing into chaos. This is why you start small, because silencing the negotiator within is not an event, it is a process. You do not argue with your distractions, you outlast them. You do not beg your mind to obey, you train it like a muscle. And with each day you do, the weaker self, the one that delayed, doubted, complained, fades a little more until one day you catch your reflection and comprehend something profound. You did not merely become disciplined, you became dangerous, not because you can control others, but because you can finally command yourself. That is what unsettles people, that you do not ask for motivation, that you do not stall with emotional explanations, that you just move. You say nothing, yet your consistency speaks volumes. You do not require sympathy, you require direction. You do not wait to feel ready. You act until readiness becomes irrelevant. That is the path. That is the process. And once you have lived it enough times, you will not recall the last instance you asked yourself if you felt like it, because you will no longer care. That question has been evicted from your mind. That version of you that once hesitated, once explained, once needed convincing, is gone. In its place stands someone who does not waver, does not ask, does not need, who just moves, acts, becomes. Discipline is the quiet war you wage against the weaker version of yourself. There was a time you likely announced every decision, every goal, every new plan, every promise of transformation. You spoke of the new schedule, the early rises, the regimen, the grind. You felt that if you declared it loudly enough, if enough people knew, then perhaps you would follow through. Maybe external pressure would bind you to accountability. But it never did it? Because speaking gave you the sensation of movement without any of the sacrifice. Over time, you learned the unspoken truth. When you vocalize too soon, you vent the pressure before it can generate power. Authentic change does not require a megaphone. It does not require an audience. It requires silence, not because you are hiding, but because you are finally at home within your discipline. You do not have to explain the work when you have become the work. That is when the axis shifts. It is peculiar how silence becomes your armor, not because it shields you from others, but because it shields your focus from their noise. The moment you cease sharing everything is the moment you cease seeking approval. And without that hunger for validation, you gain something rarer than praise, presence. People who once felt close may start to say, "You are distant, cold, detached." But what they are truly sensing is your stillness. And stillness is profoundly unsettling to the chaotic, because most do not know how to exist without noise. They panic in quiet. They seek constant feedback to feel alive. But discipline does not seek attention. It becomes attention. You enter a room without a word, and the atmosphere shifts. Not because you demand respect, but because your silence demands self-respect. It is the look in your eyes, the way you no longer explain, the way your actions arrive unannounced and irreversible. You have become something they cannot decipher, and what people cannot decipher, they often fear. At first, that silence feels strange, as if you are withholding, but eventually it becomes peace. You realize how much energy you wasted narrating your journey to people who were never walking with you, people who did not grasp the weight of your ambition, yet felt entitled to comment upon it. So you release it. You release the need to convince them, to make them comfortable with your growth. And in that quiet, you grow faster, deeper, because no one is interrupting, no one is reacting, no one is projecting their limitations onto your labor. It is just you, the path, and the sound of your own breath. You finally hear yourself think, and more crucially, you hear yourself believe. That is the voice once drowned out by applause, by commentary, by shallow encouragement. Now it is clear. Now it leads. The Stoics understood the value of this stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. When you constantly speak of what you plan to do, you surrender your power. You give your energy to entities you cannot hold. Opinions, likes, praise. Silence reclaims that energy. It gathers it like a gathering storm. It holds it close, refines it, sharpens it. So when you do act, when you execute, it is not tentative. It is not diluted by a need to be understood. It is direct, clean, heavy. That weight can only originate from the depth of work done alone, in private, in quiet. You do not require an audience to become excellent. You only need to decide that attention is not the goal. Mastery is. That is the paradox. The less you speak, the more people wish to know what you are doing. The less you share, the more they speculate. Silence generates mystery, and mystery holds power. But you are not silent to manipulate. You are silent because you are working, because the process demands it, because explaining every step only distracts you from the next. In the time others spend discussing the life they desire, you have laid its foundation. Quietly, relentlessly, without fanfare. That is the distinction between movement and momentum. Movement can be chaotic, noisy, theatrical. Momentum is quiet. It builds underground until it breaks the surface, and when it does, it is undeniable. People may accuse you of being distant, of being cold. Let them. They do not comprehend that solitude was necessary, that to hear your own values, you had to mute theirs, that to follow your own path, you had to step away from theirs. They mistake silence for disconnection, but the truth is it signifies connection, just not to them, to something deeper, to something lasting. Seneca advised to associate with those likely to improve you. If no one around meets that standard, then your silence becomes your shield. It becomes the sacred space where your discipline can grow uncontaminated by mediocrity. Eventually, your silence becomes your signature. You no longer explain your habits, your schedule, your standards. People simply notice. You walk past them and they feel the weight of your choices without a word spoken. They see the results, and those results are louder than any proclamation. Because discipline leaves a trail. It inscribes its own narrative. It requires no introduction. If you stay committed long enough, that story begins to speak for you. Without hashtags, without posts, without announcements. Just presence, just execution, just the quiet certainty that you no longer need to be seen because you know who you are. That is what makes silence a signal, not of absence, but of focus, not of retreat, but of preparation. You have not vanished. You have realigned. You have entered a space where every move is intentional, where every hour carries weight, where every day serves the mission. And because you no longer need applause, You have become immune to the fear of being overlooked. You have traded visibility for vision, and that trade will always repay you more than popularity ever could. Discipline does not ask for recognition. It earns it quietly over time. And when recognition finally arrives, it does not beg to be seen. It demands to be respected. That is the life you are building now, in silence, in strength, in total alignment with the person you vowed to become. You still feel everything. That is the element most misunderstand. They assume being disciplined means being numb, disconnected, emotionless. But that is false. The disciplined individual feels every ounce of pressure, every surge of doubt, every ache of exhaustion. The difference is they do not obey it. Emotions arrive uninvited and often unwanted, but they are not permitted to occupy the driver's seat. They knock, they shout, they plead, but the door remains closed. You cannot eliminate emotion, nor should you try. You can only assign it its proper place, like a gust against a vessel. It can push you off course if you are not anchored, but if you know how to navigate it, it can even assist your forward motion. The key is control, not of the emotion itself, but of your response to it. Consider how many decisions you have made merely to alter your feeling. How many times you skipped the workout, not because it was logical, but because comfort felt preferable. How many tasks you delayed because boredom whispered later. How many goals you paused because fear murmured, "What if it fails?" Emotions are persuasive. They wear the voice of reason even when making no sense. And unless you have trained your mind to pause, to hold, to assess, you will succumb every time. The disciplined person still hears those voices, but they have cultivated a second voice. One that does not argue, does not panic, does not collapse. One that simply states, proceed. Not because the emotion is unreal, but because it lacks authority. You will feel the pull to halt, especially when progress is invisible. You will feel the desire to distract, especially when focus begins to ache. You will feel the hunger for an easier path, especially when the journey grows lonely. All of this is expected. It is not a flaw in your system. It is the system. You are not being tested to see if you can avoid emotion. You are being trained to act through it. Carl Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is what discipline truly accomplishes. It exposes the patterns. It brings light to the emotional reactions that once controlled you in darkness. It does not suppress, it reveals. There is a difference between acknowledging a storm and stepping into it. You can observe the rainfall, hear the thunder, but if you have a mission, you don your coat and walk regardless. That is discipline. Not the absence of rain, but the refusal to let it halt you. Emotional weather will always shift. One day you will feel unstoppable. The next you will feel like quitting before you begin. But the disciplined person knows the truth. Feelings are not facts. They are merely data. You take the information and then you decide what matters. The goal does not change. The schedule does not change. The commitment does not pause just because your mood dipped. This is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about being honest. Too many confuse kindness with indulgence. They think heeding every emotion is self-care. But sometimes self-care is discipline. Sometimes love for yourself is saying no. You keep going because you know what lies on the other side of consistency. You have felt the pride of following through when everything within wanted to fold, and you have felt the regret of quitting for comfort. That contrast instructs you more than any book ever could. It teaches you that emotional authority does not come from silence. It comes from structure, from showing up anyway, from doing what must be done, especially when it feels like the last thing you want to do. The more you train this way, the quieter the chaos becomes. not because it vanishes, but because you have altered your relationship to it. You no longer panic when doubt arises. You simply breathe. You no longer crumble under frustration. You simply adjust. You have constructed a mind that knows how to hold the line, and that kind of mind, steady, unbending, alert, is rare. Most fold at the first sensation of discomfort. They label it a sign. They call it intuition. But the disciplined know better. They know intuition must be honed through action, not just emotion. That not every discomfort is a warning. Sometimes it is merely resistance before growth. When emotions become background noise instead of commands, you become efficient. You become focused. You become remarkably difficult to knock off course. And that is when people start to ask how you do it, how you stay so consistent, so stable, so unaffected. But they do not see the work. They do not witness the mental repetitions. The moments you sat in frustration and did not react. The moments you faced self-doubt and did not flinch. The moments you were bone tired and still followed through. They only see the surface, but beneath it lies a mind trained to act not from emotion, but from clarity. Aristotle believed excellence was not an act, but a habit. This habit is not built when everything feels good. It is built when everything screams to stop, and you do not. When you train that way long enough, you do not just develop discipline, you develop peace, because nothing inside you is fighting anymore. The emotions are there, yes, but they are no longer loud. They are no longer pulling you in 10 directions. They have been heard, but they have also been overruled calmly, consistently, and that calm is what makes the disciplined so disconcerting to others, because when you cannot be easily swayed, you become rare. And when you become rare, you become powerful, not because you dominate the world, but because you have finally learned how to lead yourself. Power is not volume, it is the unwavering consistency of your actions. You do not need to shock the world to be powerful. You do not need to manufacture surprises or reinvent yourself monthly to stay relevant. You just need to become someone whose word, especially to yourself, is law. Predictability, as most conceive it, sounds dull. It sounds like stagnation, but there exists a different kind of predictability, the kind that does not bend when the wind shifts, the kind that does not inquire how hard the day will be before deciding how much to give, the kind that becomes so rooted in consistent action it appears unshakable from the outside. That is the kind of predictability that unnerves people. Because when you move without needing the push, without needing the praise, without needing perfect conditions, you shatter the mold they have come to expect from others, and even from themselves. There is something deeply unsettling about a person who does what they said they would, even when nobody is checking. There is a quiet tension to it, a steady intensity that does not beg to be noticed, but cannot be ignored, because it is rare. Most flinch the moment pressure arrives. They act when the spotlight is on and stall the instant it turns off. Their entire rhythm is reactive. But when you are disciplined, your rhythm does not change. It does not depend on attention. It does not shift based on mood or convenience. You become dependable in a way that makes people question their own inconsistency. And without ever raising your voice or imposing your will, you begin to lead because others sense something in you they have not built within themselves. When you become predictable to yourself, you stop breaking promises quietly. You stop waking up wondering if you will follow through. You stop planning things only to abandon them the moment emotion or chaos interferes. Instead, your days begin to feel solid, grounded. You build momentum not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer debating. You have already decided. And when something is already decided, energy is not wasted on convincing yourself anew. You just move, like gravity, like seasons, like a law of nature. Carl Jung also said you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. The disciplined person does not need to speak loudly because their actions have already established a pattern. That pattern becomes identity. That identity becomes power, not power over others, but power over uncertainty, power over hesitation, power over the emotional swings that take most people out of alignment. When you act predictably, not because you are being watched, but because it is simply who you are now, life changes. Not dramatically at first, but piece by piece, brick by brick. You earn something that cannot be counterfeited, self-respect, and that respect becomes your backbone. It is easy to set goals. Everyone does that. It is easy to discuss ambition. Everyone possesses some version of it. But the rarest sight is someone quietly building every single day, even when no one is clapping, even when results are months distant, even when the road is repetitive and thankless. That kind of person begins to move differently. They no longer rush to prove themselves. They no longer over-explain their intentions. They do not speak much of their discipline because they do not need to. The proof is everywhere. In their health, their habits, their tone, their ability to remain calm when others unravel. Because someone who commands their daily actions eventually commands their entire life. And when people witness that kind of consistency, they do not always cheer. Sometimes they resist. Sometimes they mock or misunderstand. Because observing someone so consistent, so focused, reminds them of what they are not doing. It exposes the areas where they have let comfort lead. But you are not trying to expose anyone. You are merely following through, again and again and again. And with each day, you stop needing permission. You stop needing motivation. You stop needing the external world to align before you take the next step. You become your own authority. Marcus Aurelius once wrote to waste no more time arguing what a good person should be, and to simply be one. That is the mindset you adopt when your actions align with your values, regardless of who is watching. You no longer need to discuss your intentions because you have already embodied them. You are not chasing inspiration anymore. You are building it through repetition. And in doing so, you become someone others can rely on, but more importantly, someone you can rely on. You have erased the internal doubt that used to whisper, "Will I actually do it this time?" Because now the answer is yes, not as a hope, but as a fact. It is already encoded into your system. There is peace in that. Peace in waking and knowing your behavior does not swing wildly based on the weather, the news, or a friend's mood. Peace in knowing discipline has granted you a structure stronger than circumstance, that no matter what collapses around you, your process remains intact. That kind of stability spreads. It fortifies every part of your life. Your relationships feel different. Your work sharpens. Your mind clears because you are no longer pulled in every direction. You have direction. And in the rare moments chaos attempts to break through, you do not panic. You do not crumble. You simply pause, adjust, and return to the pattern that built you. That is what discipline gives you. A lifeline that does not waver when life does. You do not need to predict the future when you have made yourself predictable in the finest sense. You already know how you will respond. And knowing that grants you something almost no one possesses: certainty in yourself. That certainty is not loud. It is not dramatic. It merely appears every day in the small choices, the quiet wins, the repeated follow-through. Over time, those minute moments become your legacy, because while the world runs in circles chasing what is new, exciting, easy, you just keep showing up. And that renders you unstoppable, not because you move fast, but because you never stop. If you are ready for the next phase of becoming, watch one of the videos on your screen now. And if this resonated with you, please like this video. It truly supports the channel's Stoic Mindset Mastery. Thank you for walking this path.